I am really Jewish. I'm not kidding. I went to Jewish day school, I sung in my synagogue choir, and I even now teach Hebrew school. I am so Jewish that I wrote a show about teaching Hebrew school called Hebrew School Horror. But there's something that not everyone knows about me. I also used to be a Mormon. Now, I never converted or went on a mission, but for a brief time from the ages of 11 to 15, I spent every Sunday in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. How did this happen? Well, my parents divorced when I was 7, and 3 years later, my dad met my soon-to-be stepmother, Susie, working in a hospital. Susie was everything a shiksa woman should be. Blonde, flat-chested, and with the decorating flourishes of Martha Stewart. Jews just don't do crafts as well as Mormons. They have far too much guilt and neurosis consuming their minds to concentrate on some crazy minute detail like hot gluing gemstones into napkin rings. Now, Mormons are just like us. They also go through divorces, make bad decisions, and take tons of selfies. Susie fell for my dad because he's brilliant and intense. Part of me thinks that the fact that he wasn't Mormon was an added challenge and always made their relationship exciting. She did eventually get him to convert to Mormonism. He drank the Kool-Aid, which disappointed me, but since they got divorced, he renounced all religions, so joke's on the Mormons. I remember the night my dad told me that he was getting remarried. I was eating Chinese food, and after my dad's admission about a new family, I emotionally ate an entire bowl of chow mein. How could he have found another family? But after throwing up some chow mein, I thought more about it. Susie had 4 daughters. I would have sisters. I'm an only child. Things were looking up. The only bad thing was that my dad told me that he was doing this for me. He wanted to create a real family for me. If your parents tell you they are making a family for you, they are lying. My dad wanted to sleep with my Mormon stepmom, and she wouldn't let him do it unless they got married. So he wasn't really creating a family as much as he was letting his dick win. Anyway, Susie and my dad were married in La Cañada when I was 11, and suddenly my whole world changed. Since my dad was not Mormon, they didn't get married in the temple on Santa Monica, but in a restaurant in La Crescenta. There was no champagne, but plenty of Martinellis. And so every other weekend, I left the San Fernando Valley and went to Pasadena, the whitest place on earth. As a Jew, I've never felt white, even though that's the color of my skin. My parents didn't let me eat Wonder Bread or mayo and constantly told me to never forget the Holocaust. How could I feel like my tow-headed stepsisters? I spent the weekends with them. Nancy, the oldest, who was studying art at BYU, the Mormon Center of Higher Education. Jenny, who was 17, possibly bipolar and allergic to everything. Amy, 16, who was a beautiful past member of the Rose Parade Court. And then there was Lori. Lori was exactly my age, which was perfect. I had a new best friend who I shared a bunk bed with on the weekends. We were a lovely blended family. They were like the 4 beautiful sisters from Little Women, now with a chubby Jewish mascot to call their own. That's my bat mitzvah. And Lori and my stepmom, Susie. Okay, but for real, there were problems from the start. All of my stepsisters hated my dad. And I mean, I get it. He can be an asshole, but he's still my dad. So while I always got along with my stepsisters, it was hard to tell if they really liked me considering how they felt about the man who made me. The other issue was that I was jealous of my stepsisters. They all looked like models, even Lori. I was going through a major puberty weight gain spurred by my everyday consumption of McFlurries, and they were so white. I would always be a little bit ethnic, but they would be like lilies touched by snow, white and without any anxiety. Every other Friday, my mom would drive me to Pasadena, afraid I would come home a Mormon. She had sent me to Jewish school for a reason, so I could be Jewish, and now I was fraternizing with the enemy. I promised her that I never went to church and that, of course, I wasn't Mormon. But that was a lie. I went to church every Sunday, and I always bowed my head when we said grace before dinner. At church on Sundays, I would go to Sunday school where we learned about Jesus and talked about being kind to all people, like Snow White. Also, we sang a ton of hymns at church, and as a musical theater nerd, I loved any chance to belt out anything. And I wore the same thing to church that I wore to synagogue on Friday nights, so in my opinion, there wasn't much of a difference between the two places. The one big difference was the vernacular. Instead of yarmulke, Torah, and the bima, there was Joseph Smith, Nauvoo, and sacraments. Oh, quick religion refresher for those unfamiliar with Judaism or Mormonism. Jews were first. The Jews are considered the chosen people because Abraham talked to God and God told him to be fruitful and multiply. Mormons believe that there were 3 books to the Bible, the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the Book of Mormon, which was created by Joseph Smith. You know, at South Park explains it the best. But all you have to know is that if you're Mormon, you get your own planet when you die. Oh, and Native Americans knew Moses in Mormonism, and that they used to believe in polygamy. But they don't anymore, which is exactly like Judaism, which also had a polygamous past. I guess when you're starting a religion, you need to be fruitful and multiply as much as possible. Church was exciting and weird for me. Let me preface by explaining how Jewish services at my Reformed temple worked. It was a lot of singing in Hebrew in a minor key. Jews love minor keys because it is the key of depression and hardship. I don't know if you've noticed this, but Jews can be pessimistic. Or a glass always empty kind of people. Mormon church was the opposite. There was still singing, but it was decidedly upbeat, just like Donny Osmond. Also, there was so much more talk about Jesus. As a Jewish girl, I didn't know how I felt about Jesus, but all the Mormons loved him. Not just loved him, they adored him. Their feelings for Jesus were just like my feelings about J.C. Chazé from NSYNC. A sexy, unparalleled love. They even drank Jesus' blood like vampires. But since they were Mormons and couldn't drink wine, Jesus' wine was represented by water. I never drank the Jesus juice because I felt like it was taking things a little too far. One Sunday, everyone did testimonials about their devotion to Jesus Christ. People got up one by one and cried while they discussed the way Jesus changed their lives. My stepmom sobbed about how much she loved my dad and how much she loved me and how it was all possible thanks to Jesus. It scared the shit out of me. That much outpouring of emotion about Jesus was unnatural. Jews saved their emotions for their favorite TV shows and their gastrointestinal system. At my dad's house, being a Mormon Jew was confusing. There were all these rules to navigate. You couldn't curse, you couldn't do drugs or have sex. Not that I was doing any of those things at 13, but at home I could talk about the sex people were having on the show Friends without getting in trouble. But it was clear that my stepsister Amy was having sex with her boyfriend in her room when no one was looking. I mean, I caught her boyfriend Matt zipping up his pants as he exited her room. I think my stepmom knew what was going on, but just pretended it wasn't happening. I guess that's part of being Mormon too. A little bit of lying and a little bit of denial. And then there was the fact that what was going on behind my closed doors was equally confusing. One night I was sleeping over and Lori invited me down from the top bunk and we had a massage party. It turned into my stepsister giving me a breast massage, which felt nice, but was very confusing on so many levels. Was my stepsister a lesbian? Was I now a lesbian? Would Mormon Jesus approve? And I guess I started becoming Mormon a little too. because the Jewish Aysha would tell my parents that my sister touched me, but the Mormon Aysha would offer to decorate the living room for Christmas. Christmas. All Jews love Christmas and wish they could celebrate it. And for a few glorious years, I got to have a tree and gifts from Santa. My new family celebrated Christmas Eve by putting out bubble wrap and stepping on it just for fun. It's weird. Then we would eat dinner, and then the best part, we would get matching pajamas, and we would go to bed after singing carols. And then in the morning, my step-grandparents, Rosetta and Sydney, would come over, and I got tons of presents. It was everything my Jewish heart could ask for. Easter was less fun. My most distinct Easter memory was when, while reading from the Book of Mormon, my stepmom inadvertently read a passage blaming Jesus' death on the Jews. I looked around. Shit. They were going to do something weird to me. My dad and I exchanged looks, but everyone else pretended nothing happened. Mormons. But then I turned 15, my dad got divorced from Susie, and as quickly as I had a brand new family, I suddenly had no one. We lived too far apart and were way too different. I had started acting in musicals, and my stepsisters were all cheerleaders. There was no way to bridge that divide at 15. It wasn't because I was Jewish and they were Mormon. It was because they were popular and I was a geek. Hold on. As an adult, I think I've taken some of the Mormonism with me. I am always polite to people when I first meet them, and I don't drink caffeine. About 3 years ago, my roommate moved out suddenly. My house didn't have any furniture, and I contacted my dad, who reached out to my stepmom. She mobilized all the Mormons of Pasadena, and they managed to pull together an entire living room set in one evening. When I went to pick up my new furniture, I saw my stepmom, Susie, and it was like I was 11 years old again. She told me that my stepsisters were all married and all nurses, and Lori, my best friend and first only lesbian experience, was expecting her third child. Now, I'm a childless writer and actress living in LA, and sometimes I wish I were Mormon. I would be married, I'd obviously be a nurse, and I would have no worries, because I would know that when I died, there would be a planet waiting for me in the celestial kingdom for my whole family. Unfortunately, I'll always be more Jewish, so I guess I should let you know. I'll be in the lobby afterwards to tell you about how gassy I've been lately.